Good morning, everybody. It's Steve Brown from Mirae Asset Securities with the CEO of HSBC Vietnam, Mr. Tim Evans. Tim, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Tim, the fact that HSBC Vietnam has been in the country probably longer than any other established corporation, whether it be a bank or whether it be a consumer company, a trading house, 150-year history, which is quite outstanding anywhere in any country. You've had one of the good fortunes of also working throughout Asia through the course of most of your banking career. Through the course of the conversation, we'll ask you about what factors you feel makes HSBC a standout financial services company in Vietnam, and then also where you'll see the factors that will draw further investment opportunities into Vietnam and how HSBC can be a key supporter of that through your product range. First of all, with HSBC in Vietnam, what drew you to Asia?
Oh wow, we're going a long way back. I came out to Asia in 1992. I was a young man in the UK at the time, and the UK was going through a financial crisis. I looked to Asia. My father had always been involved in the Middle East, and I spent some time growing up there. And I would look at Asia and everyone said that's the next frontier. And so I did everything I possibly could at the time to try and get to Hong Kong, because we were called Hong Kong Bank at the time. And I got to Hong Kong in 1992, August 1992, and it's probably one of the best decisions I've made in my life.
Well, the fact that you were able to join HSBC, you worked throughout the region. The opportunity to become CEO of Vietnam for HSBC must have been probably the career highlight to date throughout what you've done in your career. The awards that you've won since you've been here are also quite remarkable, highly commendable. Best Foreign Bank in Vietnam, 2021 and 2020, Finance Asia. Best Digital Banking Innovations, Asian Banking and Finance for 2020. Best Global Bank, Asset AAA in 2021. The list goes on. You know, you've got Best Sub-Custodian Security Services in Vietnam 2021. I think you're the largest or top 2 or 3, definitely one of the most popular from my experience, security services providers in Vietnam too, aren't you? And James Estor, who's helping run that for your company now in Vietnam, I think is a good example of the next generation of Tim Evans style of personnel coming through, you know. So I think you've got a very good complement of staff. You were saying earlier about 1,300 staff now in Vietnam.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So moving on from the awards, the staff, could we now have a look at the opportunities and business sectors that are of high interest to HSBC in the post-COVID world? We read recently about your green financing initiative, your support package to help with ESG, the socially responsible lending for energy, and I think that's a fantastic thing to see. If you'd like to expand on that for us.
Yes, if we just focus on what we're trying to do in sustainable finance, Vietnam, sadly, is one of the top 5 countries in the world, according to the World Bank, that will be adversely impacted by climate change. And if you actually look at the city that we're in right now, Ho Chi Minh City is one of the top 5 in the world as well. So a 1 meter rise in water would lead to about 10 million people in Vietnam being immediately impacted. A 3 meter increase is 25 to 30 million people. So climate change, whilst it's absolutely real for the world and for humanity, in Vietnam it's absolutely critical. And as a bank that's been here 151 years, we need to work together with the Vietnamese authorities, the Vietnamese corporate sector, and the Vietnamese people to help them address this very real risk. And there is a cost to doing nothing. We estimate that the impact of doing nothing is around 3 to 4% of GDP. So there is a cost to just letting time elapse. And therefore, we have taken a leadership position where we've said that we will help the Vietnamese authorities, both the private and the public sector, raise up to $12 billion of green or sustainable finance by 2030.
Wow. So, yeah, like it's a sad situation, isn't it? I see Jakarta, they've even had to contemplate, well, they've actually already approved the moving of the nation's capital to Borneo, which is miles away from the island of Java. But for the near 30 million people there, they can't move. And it would be the case too, obviously, then with the Ho Chi Minh City urban conurbation. Some are on higher ground, but millions are not.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so that's a very commendable effort that HSBC is doing. You're also looking at things such as wind energy and solar financing, involving Vietnamese companies, even Vietnamese listed companies, Jardines Group as well, through their investments through Platinum Victory into companies like Mirae as well. I think you also had the first environmentally friendly exchangeable bond for Vingroup too, didn't you?
Not just the first one in Vietnam, but the first one globally.
No way.
Which was done for Vinpearl. So, a first for Vietnam, but a first for the globe as well.
Yeah.
But going green is not just a marketing slogan. Going green isn't just policies and frameworks by the government or the large corporates. It's a way of life.
Yeah.
And so all our credit cards, for example, are done on recycled plastic. We have personal loans through our retail bank or our consumer bank directly targeting people who want to buy solar panels and put them on their roof. The HSBC house that I'm fortunate enough to live in, we've just recently put solar paneling on the roof. So this transition to green, net zero, is something that we all have to get on board with. And so yes, we can talk about the big transactions, the sustainable bonds that we do, but I think we have to also look at every little step that we make along the way so that we are net zero both in our own operations, but also to help Vietnam become net zero by 2050.
Yes. And if we have a look at not only supporting the citizenry of Vietnam with their environmentally friendly energy needs, you're also now looking at through HSBC Premier to try and help an increasingly mass affluent Vietnamese citizenry with wealth planning, financial planning. You've partnered strategically with one of the leading mutual fund companies in Vietnam with international presence, Vina Capital, where your staff can now start to refer mutual funds as well. So do you see the expansion of that leading to where your customer base will then maybe one day also be able to go into, say, securities, listed equities in Vietnam as well? Have you been kind of like storyboarding the possibilities there, or are you just taking it step by step, obviously?
Well, both is the simple answer. We have the fortune of operating in over 60 countries globally, and we've seen the transition of many of those countries in the past, and so we kind of know what the key themes are. And one of the themes that is driving the Vietnamese economy is the growing middle class. And that will change consumer behavior, that will change consumption, but at some stage it will also change the way they look to invest. And therefore, that's why we've partnered with Vina Capital, because the offer of your wealth management is a time deposit, and you can choose between 1, 3, 6, or 12 months, isn't very appealing. And the middle class are becoming much more sophisticated, and they want to participate in the success of Vietnam. And so what better way to do that than partner with a local company? And that's why we've started this. And whilst I can't go into the numbers, it's been successful way beyond our initial expectations. So yes, absolutely, we see very strong buy-in from the Vietnamese consumer. And that will be a natural progression where they will then look to be involved in equities, etc.
Good. And just advancing along the complementary services on offer for your typical client base, digital banking. You've been winning awards for that as well. The service provisions that you've got there, there's Best Digital Banking Initiative 2020, Asian Banking and Finance. You're also lending in that space, fintech space as well, to companies in Vietnam. So I would imagine the clients of yours will be able to potentially invest or switch from their deposit accounts into mutual funds maybe, or into any of the other products in time as well. Would you like to expand upon your digital banking platform vision for Vietnam with HSBC?
So the digital journey was something that started pre-COVID. What we realized with COVID, and not just in Vietnam, but globally, was that as people were locked down, as people were less mobile, the way they wanted to transact with their shop, with their bank, with whatever party, was they were much more receptive to doing this remotely and to doing this through a digital means. And so we saw a massive uptake actually in the use of all of our digital platforms. But I think one point that's very important to make is that digital just isn't just the front end. It's not just your cell phone or your laptop or your tablet. It's actually the back end process as well. And so we've made a point of our digital strategy not being aimed at just a flashy front end, but ensuring that our back end processes are all digitalized. So for example, in the past, applying for a new credit card, going through the whole credit process and then getting it approved was an 8.5, 9-day journey. We digitalized that whole process and called it Project Rocket because it was supposed to make it quicker, but it's now less than 2 days. And so it's a broad digital strategy, and it's not just limited to the retail or consumer, end consumer. We're also doing it in the corporate space. But I do think that one of the positives that came out of COVID is a much greater receptivity to people being willing to transact remotely with the bank. And that has really been a catalyst for growth in the digital space. And I think the banks that haven't done that will fall behind.
Yes, yeah. And also in the digitalization space, there's a lot of companies which are trying to get a greater share of the consumer wallet in Vietnam. There's the likes of the fintech startups like Momo and the others that Timo, I think, is also one of the recent ones. But they're not full service banking providers, so they operate on very different metrics to yourself, and lending possibilities far outweigh through HSBC than the digital pure play competitors that you've got. With the comment now moving towards the larger client types, the security services client types that you have and we have at Mirae Asset, they're very interested in the pre-funding, upgrading, transitioning to a central clearing counterparty transaction mechanism. So the likes of Dominic Scriven, who's the chair of the Vietnam Business Forum Capital Markets Working Group, he's a keen driver to try and see if the pre-funding criteria can be modernized. And I think your company is also looking at helping achieve transition there, because you've got some of your clients among, like I said earlier, the top 3 easily in Vietnam for custodian services for the international foreign indirect investors coming into Vietnam.
Our indications will be top 1.
Top 1, yes. Well, that's probably right on the money, yeah. And also among the a lot of the local ones as well, the local funds. And the outlook for that. Now, the government, the Prime Minister and his team, they're hoping to upgrade as part of their policy to emerging market by 2025. If we firstly look at the pre-funding change, do you think that might start to happen sooner than then, maybe sometime this year or next year?
I mean, for me, it's very difficult to put a timeline on it. My sense, having spoken to SSC and VSD, is that a lot of the plans for the migration from frontier to emerging market were put on hold given the situation that we've had with COVID. But I genuinely believe that the government sees a real opportunity for Vietnam to be emerging market. And if you look at countries that recently moved from frontier to emerging, so you look at Kuwait, you look at Pakistan, you look at the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I would argue that Vietnam is a much more exciting prospect than some of those economies that I've referenced. And what we've seen in those markets from an HSBC perspective is that you get a 5 to 7x increase as fund managers reallocate So right now, Vietnam is the largest in the frontier market bucket. If it moves, or when it moves, and the date is uncertain, but I would suggest maybe before 2025, if it gets to emerging market status, we anticipate seeing at least a 7 to 10x increase in transaction count. And we've resourced up our business accordingly, because we do not want to be in a position that happens and HSBC cannot support with its market leading position the transaction volumes that we'll see. So we have already started that investment journey. We're close to completing that investment journey because we believe it'll be potentially before 2025. But I can't commit to an exact date.
Okay, well, that sounds very exciting. And I personally, from having client in interactions who use your custodian services and others, they're all of the opinion that they would love to be able to get over the pre-funding hurdle.
Absolutely.
You know, so there would be a wall of money coming if that could be done. You know, so, and then also, if we could just have a look at the way that you think the mix of foreign banks who are providing funding to the securities companies in Vietnam. There's a lot of comment and a lot of usage of, say, Taiwanese banks who are providing 12-month short-term financing for securities companies so they can extend that on thereafter for margin loan lending purposes for their clients or other general working capital requirements. I haven't personally read a lot of press about HSBC participating in that part of the financial world. Is it something that you look at, or do you prefer to expand the business through the green financing and wealth management rather than providing, say, margin credit financing for securities companies?
Strategically, so is it something we look at? Absolutely. Do we look at it? And clearly it depends on the counterparty. Yes. Are we prepared to consider it for equality names? Yes. Do we publish it in the public domain? No. But if I take a step back and say, okay, what are the key drivers of the Vietnamese economy for the next 5 years? They will be, and in no particular order, right? There will be, one, continued foreign direct investment into the country. So $35, $40 billion a year. That is an area where HSBC thinks we have competitive advantage. We're present in 60 countries. If you look at the key inflows, Korea, Japan, Singapore, US, Germany, etc., we're present in all those markets. So that is one key theme. The other theme is the growing sophistication of the Vietnamese corporate sector. So you referenced that we did the first exchangeable sustainable bond for Vinpearl. Classic example. The Vietnamese corporate sector is becoming much more sophisticated. They are looking now at capital markets, onshore and offshore. And we feel with our distribution network, our capabilities out of Singapore and Hong Kong, that we're able to support that theme of the economy. The third one, and we've already touched on it, is the growing middle class and how that will drive consumer behavior, investment behavior in the economy. The fourth one we've touched on, frontier to emerging market status. And then I would put possibly two others, one being green finance. Prime Minister Chin was at COP26 with a large delegation and made some very bold statements about Vietnam's commitments to climate change. And so I do believe that there's strong receptivity at top of house in Vietnam to drive this agenda item. And therefore the banks that can tap into that support will see opportunity. And then the last one I would say is infrastructure. It's an area where Vietnam has to play catch up. They do spend roughly 7% of their GDP on developing infrastructure. But what would potentially hold back Vietnam is the lack of infrastructure or lack of developed infrastructure. So I see those 5 or 6 themes as being the main ones that will drive this economy forward. And therefore it's incumbent on me and my team to position our organization so that we can play into those themes, because that's where you will capture the opportunities.
Sure. Okay. And just lastly, recently, one of your global competitors, Citi, they've withdrawn from quite a few regional Asian markets, Vietnam being one, Malaysia, Indonesia, another couple there as well. But surprisingly, it didn't take very long to find a buyer. UOB came on board and spent quite a few $1 billion. So you're staying here, I think, shows the value of your franchise, and you'd probably find, well, the business development for the UOB brand, I think, will probably take a little bit of time to develop now. But I think it's a credit to see for foreign banks, including HSBC, that there's still a lot of global interest, because traditionally they've tried to attract strategic investors into listed banks. And sometimes it's worked well, sometimes it's not. And whether it be for a tier 1 or whether a tier 2, like what happened with OCB and BNP. I think overall the outlook for the Vietnamese banking system is looking very robust with that news of UOB coming on board. So, Mr. Tim Evans, thank you so much for popping in and having a chat with Mirae Asset Live. And we hope to speak in the coming time with more of your key staff and personnel when things happen in the market, and such as some of your well-renowned economists, Harold van der Linde. I speak to him professionally, but we would love to start to also let the people of Vietnam and our international investment community know that HSBC does have a full suite of services available in Vietnam, and many of our clients at Mirae use HSBC products such as the securities and custodian facilities available. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. You did start this by personally congratulating me on all the awards that HSBC had won. I just want to make sure the audience knows that this is down entirely to the team that we have in HSBC Vietnam, and I just happen to be very fortunate to be at the head of that right now. So absolutely, I think if you want other members of my team to come and talk more in depth about what they're doing within their particular spheres of influence, I'd be happy to support.
Thank you so much. Steve Brown from Mirae Asset Securities with Mr. Tim Evans, the Vietnam CEO of HSBC. Have a good morning.